good morning and welcome to Valley Views. I'm your host, Glenn Edison, and we're certainly glad to have you today. And we want to thank BTC Fiber, who is sponsoring our program. And today we have with us Debbie Adams, Vice President of Student Affairs at Chattanooga State. And we're going to be talking about financial aid and other forms of aid for students getting into college today. And Debbie, I should mention, is also a school board member for District 8 out at Lone Oak. So, Debbie, it's good to have you, and glad you're being with us today.
Thank you, Glenn.
And I'd like to ask you, well, first of all, what's the process for students to apply for financial aid? I know there's many options out there, and sometimes they're not aware of what to do and how to do.
Yeah.
So, could you elaborate a little bit on that before we get into our other topics?
Sure, and I guess one of the most complicated subjects of students coming to college is how do you get money for college? How do you apply for financial aid? And, thankfully in the last few years the process has been a little bit more streamlined, but all roads begin with the FAFSA. Everything that you have to do these days, you really need to start with the FAFSA. The FAFSA is the Free Application for Student Aid, FAFSA. And if you log into FAFSA.edu.gov, and you can get that online. And be careful about that. There are some sites out there that charge you, and this is a free application for federal student aid, and so make sure that you are on the free page. And there's another one, it's studentaid.gov, I believe is the name of it, where you can access this. But so yeah, you start with the FAFSA, and one of the things you need to be aware of right now is there are two aid years out there. There's the 2021 school year, because we still have students who are applying for spring and summer. And if you intend to come spring and summer, you would fill out the FAFSA for the 2021 school year. And that's based on your 2018 taxes.
Okay.
But also, it was just put up the 21-22. I can't believe we're talking about 22 already. But the 21-22 FAFSA is out there. Those are for students who will be graduating in the spring and going to school beginning in the fall. And that FAFSA will take them through fall and all the way through next year. You do have to reapply every year and fill out that FAFSA. And usually it's in the spring of the year when we start talking with that. So that's your first step. Now, if you want me to, I'll kind of give you some pitfalls about that and some things to watch out for if we've got...
Well, sure. I know a lot of students, like I said, they're not aware of what to do, and they wait to the last minute, and then their funds don't always come in like they like.
So when you fill out this FAFSA, the first thing that you do, it will ask you a series of questions, and it's determined whether you are a dependent student or an independent student. Now, a dependent student is a student normally that is under 24 years of age, and whether they're living with their family or not, but their family is providing them some support. So if you are under 24 years of age and you answer this series of questions, more than likely you'll be a dependent student. And so you will have to use the income taxes of your family, your parents, your mother, your dad, whomever's living in the house, and your taxes if you have actually worked. The other category is an independent student. An independent student is a student who's usually over 24 years of age, but sometimes, and then you would use just your taxes that you file, or whoever lives in your household, if your spouse or whomever's with you. There are exceptions to a dependent student who's under 24 to be classified as an independent, and some of those things might be that they are married, or they have a child, or they are a veteran. There's a series of questions that you'll be asked, and it could be that you're under 24 and classified as an independent. But that tells you how to start the process. The other good thing that has happened in the last few years, we used to have to sit and pull out our tax forms and, look at line 20A and write down the amount. Don't have to do that anymore. There's an IRS retrieval tool that you can click on, and when you click on that, it automatically pulls in your information from that tax year. So that cuts down on a lot of errors that we made when we
Right.
transposed numbers or, got on the wrong line or whatever we
Right.
might have done. So, that's one of the really good things that has happened. So once you fill out that FAFSA, it goes over to the Department of Education and they do some calculation on it and they come up with what is called the Expected Family Contribution, the EFC. You will hear a lot of colleges say, what is your EFC? What is your EFC? Well, based on this formula, it is calculated as to what the Department of Ed thinks that your family or you could contribute toward the cost of education. Expected Family Contribution, EFC. So you take that number and then each college every year has to submit a cost of attendance budget. In that cost of attendance budget, we put in things like what's the tuition and fees, what are living expenses, books, those type of things that you need. There's certain allowances for those. And we come up with a cost of attendance. So whatever the college's cost of attendance is, minus the expected family contribution, is how they calculate how much aid you
Oh,
get.
okay.
So a lot of our students in our area, we have a lot of students in poverty here or
Right.
low income, and they will have a 0 EFC.
Uh-huh.
And so that is really great. That means they're going to get the maximum amount of aid that is eligible. And what we're talking about right now is what I call free money, grants that you don't have to pay back.
Right.
So that's what the FAFSA is used for. So you can say, are you eligible for any Pell Grants or anything like that? If you're not, you can always apply for loans. But I think there's enough aid out there we don't have to apply for loans now. But even one of the things that some families do, they don't fill out a FAFSA because they say, oh, my family makes too much money. I just know I'm not going to be eligible
Right.
for that. Today, you have to fill out the FAFSA. No matter if you make $500,000 a year, you need to fill it out because scholarships look at FAFSA too. So they want everybody to fill it out and to determine how much money that student may be able to get for free aid. So that's the first step.
All right. Now,
And then, okay.
what's your next step?
So then, after those things come back and one of the other things, it's really important on the FAFSA, you're asked which colleges you want to send the information to.
Right.
And I think you can list up to 3, it might be 5. But, so if you're interested in several institutions, make sure that you put that on there. Then the colleges will go in and they get this information daily. And it usually takes a week or 2 weeks for the federal government to process this, but it comes into a download. So at Chattanooga State, we will download that information and we'll be able to see, okay, this student's eligible for this much money or what. It's really important though, some of the programs we're going to talk about, the information only goes to the college that is listed first on the FAFSA. So let's say that somebody thought they might be going to go to Tennessee Tech and they put Tennessee Tech first on the FAFSA and Chattanooga State was third. We would have access to that information, but it might not be automatically downloaded in our system. So when a student decides where they really want to go, they need to log back in there and make sure that their number one institution is number one on their list. So, but anyway, so we start with FAFSA, and if you want to talk about high school students first, you want to talk about
Yes,
maybe...
because they have all the different opportunities
Yeah.
today.
Yeah, so there's so much out there for a high school graduate right now, and one of the programs that we are most familiar with here in our state of Tennessee is Tennessee Promise. I think we're probably in our 6th year of Tennessee Promise. I'm not sure. I've forgotten the years, but the Tennessee Promise it's called a last dollar scholarship. Now I'll explain to you what that means and in just a minute. But so students who are graduating from high school, there's no eligibility requirement. You just have to be going to graduate. There's no grade point average, there's no ACT score that you have to do. All you have to do is apply for that, and you apply for that in your senior year. Normally the deadline is November 1st. But this year, due to COVID, we had a reduction in the number of applicants, as you can well expect.
Yeah.
And so the governor's office has extended that to December 1. So we still have a little bit of time for students who have not applied and filled that out. They can go do that. They go to the Tennessee Achieves, tennesseeachieves.org, or if you just search Tennessee Promise, it'll pop up. And you fill out an application to say that you're interested in it. When you apply, there are several things that you have to do to maintain eligibility. One of them, you will have to fill out your FAFSA by February the 1st. So if you applied, if you're a high school senior and you've applied for Promise, you have till February 1st of 2021 to fill out your FAFSA this year. The other things that you have to do, there are a couple of mandatory meetings where they go and tell you about the program, not very painful, they never last over an hour. And then the other thing is you get assigned a mentor. And I've been a mentor since the beginning of this program, and I mentor at Sequatchie County High. And each year they assign me about 5 or 6 students. And what they ask the mentors to do is really just give nudges along the way. Have you filled out your FAFSA? Have you filled out your college application yet? Have you been to college orientation yet? But sometimes, our students, they're involved in so much these days that they forget. And so we're just there to give them a little bit of nudge. And then because I work at Chattanooga State, a lot of my students that I mentor, they're calling me with other things that I can help too. But it's just a good program. And then they also have to do 8 hours of community service every semester. And like that, there's not a lot of restrictions on that.
Yeah, I'm going to say that community service is kind of open. You could pretty much.
Yeah, you just can't mow the lawn for your parents and count that as community service. But, there's so many great activities here in the area, in the valley, that you can do things, or I know at the college. And because I work at Chattanooga State, I speak about Chattanooga State a lot. But, Tennessee Promise is good at any community college. And we have, I know in the area, we have a lot of students that go to Rome State. We have a lot that go to Motlow State. So, but it is only good at a community college. And so, if you are eligible, then you must enroll as a full-time student and maintain. You can't go a year, drop out a year, and come back. It's continuous enrollment, and it's good for 5 semesters. And, to get an associate degree is about 60 credit hours. So if you take 12, 15 credit hours, if you take 12 and go 5 semesters, you got your six in there, 60 hours in there. So for most students, it will pay for their first 2 years of college. Now let me talk a little bit about what it pays for. It is what I said, a last dollar scholarship. So let me explain that for just a minute. So we talked about FAFSA earlier, and when the students fill out that FAFSA, it will say, Debbie's eligible for, X number of dollars. Let's say I'm eligible for $1,000 in Pell Grant, but my tuition is $2,500. Then this will pick up and pay the $1,500 that Pell does not pay for. Now, if I'm eligible for Pell Grant and I'm going to get full Pell Grant and I'm going to get $3,500 in Pell Grant, then Tennessee Promise does not have to pay anything because Pell Grant has already paid for that. And that's what it means by last dollar scholarship. So some students will come to me and they'll say, well, hey Debbie, I get full Pell Grant. Why should I do this Tennessee Promise thing? Well, some years, this has just changed too, but we never know when it's going to change back. FAFSA didn't used to pay for summers. And so if you maintained your eligibility for Tennessee Promise, you could use that in the summer months. Or if something happens in your family and your income changes, maybe somebody gets a job and starts making a whole lot of money and now you're no longer eligible for Pell, at least you've got the backup plan. And there's no going back. That's one thing too. Students say, I didn't apply for it when I was a senior. Didn't think I was going to need it. Apply anyway. You can always decline it.
Right.
But if you don't apply and you get to your sophomore year and you say, oh, I could really use that money now, too late.
It's not there.
Too late. So, yeah. But really good program. It pays for tuition and mandatory fees. It doesn't pay. There's some incidental fees, like maybe a lab fee that all students, if it's a fee that all students have to pay, it pays for it. But if it is a lab fee for a biology class or something, then not all students, it doesn't pay for those. Doesn't pay for books. So, but that's the Tennessee Promise program. And I don't know if you have any questions about that, but there are a lot of other programs that are out there for high school students too. So.
What are some of those programs?
Well, the other one that is really popular now is our Tennessee Hope the lottery scholarship. Everybody calls it the lottery scholarship or Hope Scholarship. And now that program is based on merit, though. You do have to have a 21 on an ACT and a 3.0 GPA to receive that. But you apply for that just by filling out the FAFSA. And if you're going to a Tennessee school, you got to be a Tennessee resident. All these programs I'm talking about, got to be a Tennessee resident. And then that's additional money that you can get. The amount varies depending on if you're going to go to a community college or a university. But that's a really good one. And we have a lot of students from our area who get that too. And you can get both. You can get Promise and you can get Hope and have additional money there. You know, one thing I just thought about too, because I'm so used to talking about community colleges and Tennessee Promise, the University of Tennessee system has put in something now called UT Promise. And so that's a new one. I don't know a lot about it, but I know the application is out there, and I think they've extended that to December 15th. But if you are going to go on to a university, there's the UT Promise program. It works similar to Tennessee Promise. But Randy Boyd, who is now the president at UT, is the one who started Tennessee Promise in the state of Tennessee. And so when he became the president of the UT system, then he wanted to start that there. So you can go to UT Knoxville, UTC, UT Martin, all of the UT campuses and utilize UT Promise. Yeah, because we do have some students that want to go on and start at a university somewhere and not at a community college. And maybe we talk about that a little bit later on about the advantages of doing either. But that's a really good program. And then I always encourage students to go out and go to the college's website, and there's always under financial aid, there's usually a link about applying for scholarships. Colleges have either merit-based scholarships or need-based scholarships. Some of the scholarships I know that we have at Chattanooga State, we'll look and see, is there still a gap in your financial aid package? Did you get enough Pell Grant to cover that cost of attendance? Or could you still use another $1,000 for books or something? And our financial aid office will look at that and then package and maybe give you a book scholarship for $500. So
books are not cheap.
No. And then we have foundation scholarships, and most colleges do. We're donors. They might endow a scholarship, or we have one specifically at Chattanooga State that's for a student in Sequatchie Valley. And it was started by some folks from the Tecumseh plant when Tecumseh was here in the valley. And they started a scholarship, and it's to be awarded each year to a student from Sequatchie Valley that's going to attend college at Chattanooga State. Well, so there's all kinds of little scholarships like that out there too. And then I'd be remiss to, let's talk about community scholarships. There's so much out there, and every year we Chattanooga State I always come over to the Sequatchie County Honors Night, and sometimes I go to the Bledsoe County Honors Night, but that's usually where your community scholarships are given. And those are things like, to honor someone in the community. The Lions Club gives a scholarship here. There are several families in our area, and they may be $1,000, $500, maybe a little bit more. But that really helps with transportation, books, like you said, and those can be awarded also in addition to those Tennessee Promise and Hope scholarships too. So
Well, I know the community college is the route I chose when I started, because we had a community college in my hometown, Snead State.
Oh,
Community
yes,
College.
yeah.
And that's where I got my first 2 years and got them done before I went to University of Alabama.
Yeah. You know, I graduated and went to a university, but when I graduated, there weren't community colleges around. I'm that old. But, you know, I think about if I had it to do over again, I graduated from Sequatchie County High. There were 72 in my graduating class, and I think there were 7 of us that went on to college.
Really?
And when I think about my time there, and I went to the University of Tennessee, so I went from 72 students to 30,000 students at that time.
Yeah.
And we didn't really have a guidance counselor at high school at that time to guide us what to do. I went to the University of Tennessee because my dad had season football tickets there, and I would go to the games, and that was the university I was accustomed to. You know, it wasn't like I'd planned and done all this stuff. But anyway, I remember getting to the university in the first day of class, and I'm walking around thinking, oh, where do I go? Yeah, it didn't dawn on me that, you know, I have an English class. There are 20 sections of those going on right now. Now, where on this campus is I go? And my first class was an art class, and we had to buy these big old art portfolio folders to carry our work in. And just so happened, Glenn, that as I walked out of my dorm, there was a guy coming out of his dorm, and he was carrying one of those big art folders. And I thought, he's going to that art class. I'm going to follow him. And do you know, luckily, he was in my class, and I found it, and it was underneath the football stadium is where that class was. I would have never found that class. But had there been 3 or 4 classes going on at that time, you know, but I guess God was leading me at that point and got me to my class. But all that to say, sometimes when we come from a smaller school, and I don't know that I can't ever remember writing a lot of research papers in high school and stuff. Things are different now, but sometimes you can. It is advantageous to start at a community college and learn the ropes of college, and you know, help you to study and figure all that out. We hear a lot of times that folks are worried about credits transferring, but college English is college English. Whether you're going to the UT system, where you're going to University of Hawaii, or where you might be going, those credits transfer. Psychology, sociology. So if whatever you want to do requires a bachelor's degree, there's no need, unless you just want to start off at a university. You can get your first 2 years foundation. And now with Tennessee Promise, my gosh, you're not going to pay anything.
Right.
And this Tennessee Promise has really helped the middle income folks. I think when it first started, they thought it would help the lower income, but the lower incomes are eligible for full Pell Grant.
Right.
And, you know, the higher income bracket, they can afford to pay, but it's that middle group.
It helps those who might not have gone because they couldn't, but it gives them a chance so they can go. And they want to go, they just didn't have the opportunity.
Or their family had borrowed student loans. We've seen student loan debt go down drastically, because these families were having to take out student loans to help pay for that. So, you know, all that to say, and then, you know, some people choose a university because they want to join sororities and clubs, and, you know, that's fine. Now, I know at Chattanooga State, we have over 70 student clubs and organizations. We have a very active student life group. And you don't think about that a lot at a community college. A lot of people think, oh, I just drive in. They think that it's mostly adults coming back to school, but on our campus it's not that way at all. And most campuses now, we have very robust student life programs. We do travel abroad. We have global scholars. Our travel abroad program, study abroad, we have scholarships that we give to go and do that. So, but anyway, that's just because it's a community college. I would take a look at it and tour and see what all they have. Don't just chalk it off because you.
But Chattanooga State's one of the largest community colleges in the state, isn't it?
Yes, we are. I think Pellissippi is the largest now. We were the largest for a long time.
Right.
Or Memphis might have been ahead of us. But Pellissippi has outgrown us. Our enrollment has gone down a little bit in the last couple of years, but it's been in student enrollment. I mean, in adult enrollment.
Uh-huh.
Because our job market in our local area has been so good
Right.
that a lot of folks are not, adults are not going back and retraining. So that might be a good segue into adults going
All
back
right,
to
let's talk
school
about that
and
just a
talk
minute.
about those that want to. Because, you know, there are a lot of really good programs out there for adults too. And after we started Tennessee Promise in the state of Tennessee, we now moved to Tennessee Reconnect. Tennessee Reconnect is a very similar program to Promise, but it's for adult students. You have to be at least 24 years of age and older, or independent on that FAFSA. So you could be 20, married, have a child, be considered independent on the FAFSA, and be eligible for Reconnect. But normally we just talk about 24 age and up because you are independent at that point. So you have to be an independent student. There are no criteria again, no GPA, no income level, in anything like that. You do have to have lived in the state of Tennessee for a year. You cannot have any student loan debt. Meaning, if you've gone to another college somewhere and you took out a student loan and you're in default on a student loan, you're not eligible. You'll have to pay that back, or if you owe another institution some money. But other than that, you apply just like you do for Tennessee Promise. Fill out the application. There's some timelines out there when you have to do that by, depending on the semester you want to start. There is no community service requirement for the adult program, but you must enroll for 6 credit hours a semester, which is part-time. That's 2 classes.
Yeah.
Well, you know, most working adults, you can do 2 classes, even if you do one in person and one online,
Right.
you know, or you can do both online. But 2 classes is not very much. The good thing about Tennessee Reconnect too is there is no, it is good until you get the degree, until you get 60 credit hours. So it might be good for 10 semesters, 12 semesters, depending on, you know, how long it takes you to get that. But once you get that terminating degree, which at this point would be an associate degree because you can only use it at community college, then it cuts off. The other thing I meant to say is if you've already obtained an associate degree or a bachelor's degree, you're not eligible then. Because what the state of Tennessee wanted to do is to incentivize those that have not gone to college to get some marketable skill. Because our employers are out there demanding, you know, there are lots of jobs that go unfilled every day. You know, I hear people say, well, I can't find a job. Well, okay. Do you have any kind of skills to go to that?
Right.
And this is to help us build up a skilled workforce, or one that is trainable anyway for our economic development in our state. So that's Tennessee Promise. Very simple guidelines for that, and that's the program for adults. Now, just this past week, you may have seen the governor made an announcement. They have partnered, the Tennessee Higher Education Commission and the Department of Labor, Tennessee Department of Labor, have partnered. We have a lot of folks who are unemployed right now drawing unemployment benefits. And so what they have done is called Reconnect to Workforce, or Reconnect Workforce, but it's basically the Reconnect program. And I believe there were 500,000 letters that were going to be mailed to people who are drawing unemployment right now to consider going back to school and upgrading your skills and use Reconnect funds. And if you are drawing unemployment, you probably know that there's a requirement that you've got to continue to look for work, and you have to do that. If you enroll in school under this program, that meets that requirement. You don't have to continue to look for work. They will let you get some retraining. So that's a great program. Other things for adults, you know, also scholarships like we talked about before, but a lot of people don't think about the employer where they work, about work scholarships. And some of our students will get their associate degree and want to go and get a bachelor's degree, but go to work for somebody. And then those tuition reimbursement type programs for your employer. But there are a lot of businesses, I know Amazon, they give
Right.
a lot of
Yes, they do.
scholarships. Blue Cross does, but there are a lot of companies out there that have some type, sometimes you have to pay up front, present your grade, and they reimburse you, but some don't. They just go ahead and do that. So that's always a good thing for adults
Well,
to
it's
tune
always
into.
nice to have a educated workforce.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
because then they will have the opportunity to advance in the company.
Exactly. Yeah, I spent a number of years working in economic development at Chattanooga State and had the pleasure of working with those site selectors that were looking to bring their business into Chattanooga. And the number one question that they always ask, and here in Sequatchie County, I work with some of these companies too that come in. The number one question is, what's the education level of your workforce? And a lot of companies are willing to train you on the job, but they want to see some pattern that you've demonstrated that you are trainable.
Right.
And so, maybe your degree or it doesn't match the job, but they're willing to take a chance and train you because you have demonstrated that.
Right.
And then that also brings up something else. I hear a lot of people say, well, college isn't for everybody. Not everybody needs to go to college. I agree with that 100%, but in today's workforce, everybody needs some additional training beyond
Yes.
high school.
Yes, it
Does
is.
that mean go off and get a bachelor's degree? No. Does that maybe mean not get an associate degree? I don't know. But our TCAP programs, our Tennessee College of Applied Technology, we have a great program like that at Chattanooga State. There is one in Crossville, Tennessee. There is one in Athens, Tennessee. There's several of those. There are like 26 of those across the state. But go get a marketable skill. And people will say, well, okay, I took welding in high school. I know Bledsoe County has a great career technical education program, and I know
Right.
Sequatchie County does. When we're expanding our career and technical education opportunities at Sequatchie County, we're putting in a new welding
Right.
unit there. But, okay, so maybe you had welding in high school. Okay, that's great. You do have a skill, and you probably could go get a job with that. But it would still be a lower level job.
Right.
Why not, when you graduate from high school, go that extra year and get advanced certifications in welding and learn different types of welding, maybe laser cutting or, all the new techniques that are out there. So when you do get that job, you're starting at a higher wage level.
Right.
And so, yeah, I agree, college is not for everyone, but technical education is the thing. That's really
Right.
where we're going right now, and
Well, we need trades.
we need the trades.
Just as well as
If you've
education.
called an electrician or a plumber lately, you know what they need. Air conditioning. My mom needed air conditioning help the other day, and the service call, yeah, it was reasonable, but to get that work done, yeah.
Yeah.
They're doing a whole lot better than you or me in education, but that's
Yeah.
okay. And a few years ago, we kind of pushed the trades aside,
Yeah.
And the other thing that's interesting is we have a lot of students that want to go into the trades, but they get pushback from their parents. And if you think about that, we had this whole generation that was like, if you think about the old Wheelan Foundry plant that was over in Chattanooga, and I was in there many times, and that was one of the dirtiest places, it's just because of the process that they
Right.
did. And you think about manufacturing being a very dirty process. But I dare say, if you go into the Volkswagen plant or the Nissan plant and you see those floors, they are spit shine. And it's not what we think about our old dirty manufacturing. But as parents, we always say we want our children to have a better life than we did. But a better life might be one of these technical careers.
Sure.
But I've had students that come back and say, I really wanted to go into industrial maintenance, but my parents want me to go and get a bachelor's degree in whatever. Okay. But I think we need to relook at where those jobs are and what they're going to be doing in the future.
Yeah.
So,
Well, Debbie, is there anything else? We're about out of time, so is there anything else you'd like to add before we close?
I was afraid we didn't have enough to talk about for 30 minutes.
Oh, we had
but,
plenty.
No, I think just I want everybody to know that money is not a holdback. I think these days we understand the state is doing a lot, the federal government is doing a lot. We need people to up their skills in order for us to have a vibrant economy. And, I think that the funding is out there. You just need to ask about it.
Right.
Don't sit at home and think you can't get it. Just go and ask somebody, because every college, whichever you choose, has an office that will help you work
Right.
through the maze. So,
Well, good.
but thank you for
Thank
inviting
you.
me today. It's been a great day.
And we want to thank everyone for viewing today. Remember, we're on BTC Fiber's YouTube page, and you'll see this in a few days. And so, always thank you for our audience, because we know we have many viewers. And thank Debbie today for coming, and we appreciate everything y'all do.
Brought to you by Bledsoe Telephone Cooperative, your full-service telecommunications provider right here in the Sequatchie Valley.